Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Okay, I'm doing weird things with my hands. What are you doing? Could you not? Okay, I'm like a little busy. Mouse. Mouse. Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you will come and sit down and stay a while. My name is Brandie and this has been a long time coming. I have known for a while that I wanted to be a part of the YouTube community, but I wasn't really sure where I would fit in. I'm not a beauty YouTuber. I'm not necessarily a comedy one. I'm not a drama channel. I don't know. I didn't know where I fit in. And thanks to one of the people that I have been watching for a little bit now, Min, I feel like I finally found my place. And that might be here on BookTube. So we're definitely going to give it a whirl. Let's jump into it, shall we? If you're interested in learning about an incredible book set during the colonization of Korea by Japan, then keep watching. Okay, so the book I'm reviewing today is an incredible book that I recently in the past year I've tried to start reading some more because I moved from reading fiction to where I was reading a lot of nonfiction, a lot of articles and stuff like that, and I just missed reading things for entertainment, for enjoyment, just stuff that wasn't like how to be your best self or how to lose 157 pounds or shit like that like in our 30s I feel like we read a lot of kind of deal. The life-changing magic of tidying up. I was tired of reading stuff like that, so I wanted to get back to reading things that I was interested in and just told a story. So I looked up a book challenge because I started a book club at work with a coworker, and I was trying to find like different ways to decide what kind of books we would read, and one of the things I stumbled across was the Modern Mrs. Darcy's 2018 book challenge. And whereas my book group has gone in a different direction, I have really taken that challenge to heart and started doing some of those challenges. And so the first book in that challenge I read was a book for the read an author of a different ethnicity, religion than you. And for that I chose a Korean author, and that is Min Jin Lee, the author of Pachinko. I don't know if y'all can see that. Hopefully she's not blurry. But like I know a lot of people who know me in my life, like real life, are rolling their eyes because, just spoiler alert, I have a real affection and love for all things Korean and just East Asian culture in general. I just always have. And so of course I would start with an author like that. But that is not to dampen this book. This is a 2017 National Book Award finalist. And it's within good reason. This book literally has pages and pages of just excellent reviews on itself, okay? Just really important and well-known things. Like, okay, first of all, People Magazine, because we all know that the People Magazine is very important. People Magazine calls Pachinko a sweeping, multi-generational saga about one Korean family making its way in Japan. The immigrant issues resonate. The story captivates. Let's see. What else we got? Oh, USA Today. Ambitious. A social novel in the Dickinson vein. The Guardian UK, for all my UK watchers out there, said it was vivid and immersive. Pachinko is a rich tribute to a people that history seems intent on erasing. So what I'm saying here is a lot of people who do a lot of talking about books talked about this book. Okay, so now we're going to talk about this book. Okay. I'm fine. I'm fine. It's just, I like books. But so anyway, I took some notesy-wotsies to kind of like keep everything in order because I tend to be very like boop out there. Min Jin Lee wrote this book, and oh my gosh, she had the idea for this in 1989. This is a 2017 finalist. That is a long ass gestation period for a book, but it's well within reason because she actually did a lot of research speaking to people from this time period and getting to like know them and their stories and what was going on. So it adds a layer of authenticity to this book that I really freaking appreciate. It's really good. And so before we get into it, I want you to know that it spans from 1910 to 1989, with the Korean characters settling in Japan in 1933. So from 1933 to 1989, they're in Japan. And a quick rundown of the character list and kind of the family tree, because I don't want to spoil too much, but innately in a review you're going to have a little spoilage. It starts with like Youngjin and Hoonee, who has Sunja, who's like one of the main protagonists of the entire series. Sunja and her two love interests. You have Isaac and you have Hansu. From those relationships spawns the children Noah and Mozasu, and then Noah has children with a woman named Risa. They have Kochi and two unnamed female children. I believe they're unnamed. I couldn't find it when I looked back in the book. And Mozasu marries Yumi, and they have a child named Solomon. So that's kind of like your family tree. And then Isaac's brother Yosef is married to Kyung-hee, and they do not have children. So that's kind of, those are like the central characters and kind of how they are interrelated to each other. And so like I said, this is a story of a multi-generational family during the colonization of Korea by Japan. So what happens is that Sunja, who is one of the main protagonists, as a young girl in Korea, I think she lives in Busan, in the Busan area is where it takes place. She winds up getting pregnant by a man that she meets and starts a relationship with in the market. And she cannot be with him because, oh no, he has an entire other family. And instead of just being his wife in Korea, because he has a wife in Japan, she decides, like, forget you. And so during this time, it's not okay. It is not okay for a woman to have a child outside of wedlock. It's a really big concern, like, what's going to happen to the child. The child is not going to have a last name, and in Asian culture, last names carry heavy weight. And I mean, like, that's, you know, in cultures across the board, is that the children always took the father's last name, and children married outside of wedlock were considered bastards. During this time frame, they have a person staying at the house that Sunja and her mother Youngjin run, which is kind of like a bed and breakfast. No, it's nothing like a bed and breakfast. It's an inn, pretty much, where fishermen come to stay, and it's room and board. And so Sunja and her mom run it. And they have a traveling reverend there by the name of Isaac, who has this feeling that it is his divine godly duty to marry Sunja and give her son, or her, well, spoiler alert, it's a son, give her child his last name. So he does marry Sunja, and they go to Japan, where Isaac's brother Yosef and wife Kyung-hee are staying. And so the book opens up from there and follows the lives, like, of what it's like to be immigrants in a society that does not accept you, does not want you, has conquered your home, and thinks that you are a sub-level human. So, that being said, I wanted to answer a few of the questions, because what's really great about this book is in the back there are reading group guide questions. So this is an excellent book for, like, your book clubs and things like that. It's really interesting. Also, in this version that I have, in the back is an interview with the author, which I always love those. So I picked like 5 questions that I wanted to answer from the reading guides. And they are as follows. Number 1, history has failed us, but no matter. How does the opening line reflect the rest of the book, and do you agree? Oh my gosh. Like, the opening line says it all for the book in certain aspects. The entire premise of this book are these poor people being shat upon, literally, by society, and yet they persevere. And yet they keep on. And, like, that is just the tone that passage set for me, and it was continually shown throughout the book for me. So, yeah, I do think it reflects in the rest of the book and the struggles of the characters, and I do agree. I mean, I don't agree that it doesn't matter, but I agree that that's the tone they take, and that's the attitude they take, is we will persevere. Number 2, what does home mean to each of the main characters? Does it ever change? In what way does a yearning for home color the tone of the novel? Because this is a book about misplaced people during the awfulness of being colonized, in the generation of which Sanja and Isaac, Yosef, and Kyungki are, home is Korea, and what life was like in Korea, and the beautiful, wonderful life that they remembered there, the rose-colored glasses. Because what happens when they come to Japan is they come to Japan and live in what is essentially a ghetto. The houses are very shanty. There is crime in the area, because where there is poverty, there is inevitably crime. That doesn't matter what race you are. That's a fact of sociology. Look it up. Where there is poverty, there is crime, because people gotta live, you know? Like Isaac and Yosef's family are kind of considered a bit well off. They've got some money. They've got a pretty decent amount of land. Sanja's mother has the land that Huni left her when he passed away, and that little business. They're not well off, but they're at least more comfortable than they are in Japan. So home for them throughout the book, they're always talking about going back. Always. Till the bitter end, they're talking about going back. So that is how that generation is. Now, the generation that is born to Sanja, Noah, and Mozasu, they're born in Japan and don't know anything different than Japan. So home is not so much like a physical thing for them as it is finding your place in society. So you are born into this society, you are brought up with these people, with this learning system, with this language, and yet you're not considered a part of it. Like, you know, there's a great sociologist, W.E.B. Du Bois, and he talks about the experience of being an African American and how you always feel your two-ness, the two-warring id. I feel like that's probably how the characters of Noah and Mozasu must feel, because they ever feel that they are different, they're Korean, but they're living as Japanese people in Japanese society. So for them, I think it's the place of longing, and I think that changes as they make their way in the world, but it never completely goes away. It's just something that they settle into. For the children of Noah, I don't know. There wasn't a lot done with them because of an event that happens in the book that I won't spoil. So you don't hear too much about his children. But you follow up with Solomon a lot, who is Mozasu's child. Just not many, just one. And you follow through how his life is a little bit more simple because it is a more international time, you know. Things have changed in Korea, things have changed in Japan. He's gone abroad and learned in the US, and he's working in a big banking kind of situation. But even there, he experiences discrimination for being Korean. So it's not so much him not feeling at home, it's him feeling at home in a global setting, but also still having the discrimination. So I don't feel like Solomon had the home issue as much. It was much more prevalent in his father and his grandmother. Number 3 is compare the ways in which women in this novel, from Sanja to Hana, experience sex. So obviously with Sanja, as she gets pregnant early in the book at a young age and is unable to wed her baby daddy, she's a bit fucked, don't you think? I mean, like, let's get serious. During this time, it's really looked down on for women, and it's taboo, and like the Christianity is like on the rise in this book. They deal with a lot of Christian themes, obviously, if you didn't pick that up from people being named Noah, Isaac, Mozasu, which is Moses, child named Solomon. Christianity runs through this book, and so you know how Christianity feels about women and having the sex outside of wedlock, So for Sanja, it is like a life-ending chance that she took. And had Isaac not stepped in and helped her and Noah, who knows what would have happened to them. And then you go all the way to Hana, which is a character much later in the book, who is actually in the same age group as Mozasu's son, Solomon. So she's one of the last characters that you meet, and she is much more open with her sexuality, and it in general society isn't as tough on it. They're much more lenient. You know, in Noah and Mosasu's generation there, them having sex outside of wedlock is more common. It's not frowned upon as much, and it happens more frequently, and you're not necessarily expected to marry the people that you sleep with. So that's a huge difference from Sanja, whose life was over, to Hana, who was able to go and be much more free and liberated with sex. But you know, some stuff happens there. You should read the book and find out. Number 4, Yanjin and Kyung-hee agree that a woman's lot is to suffer. Do you think the women suffer more than the men in the book? If so, in what ways? How does the suffering of Sanja and Kyung-hee compare to that of Yoseb, Noah, and Mosasu? I am not a fan of comparing suffering, because yes, there are instances where someone has suffered so much more than someone else, but at the same time, the person who has suffered less, their suffering is still valid. So I'm not going to do that comparison. The people in the book suffer in different ways. The women suffer in the way that women have always suffered, in the way that women have suffered, like not being able to own land, which I'm not quite sure, because I thought about this earlier. I'm not quite sure if that is reflected in the book, whether they can own land or not. I know that, like, Yoseb, for instance, doesn't want Kyung-hee to work. He's adamantly against her working, and he doesn't want Sanja to work, but when some stuff happens in the book, push comes to shove, Sanja has to work, and she does. She goes out, and it's unheard of for women, or it's not unheard of, but it's frowned upon for women. But she goes and does it. Sanja makes a lot of hard decisions in this book for the betterment of her family, and she's really a progressive, forward woman in that aspect. Like, so that's what their suffering is, and their suffering, of course, is at the hands of the men they love, and like the relationships that they can and can't have, and the relationships they have with their children, and the deterioration of that. I mean, there's a lot of drama with all that, but it's worth a read, so give that a read. The men suffer from the traditional suffering that men do, of the shame of not being able to provide for their family, and then, of course, as Korean men, trying to make it in this Japanese world where they're told, like, you are less than. They have to work 10 times as hard to even be looked at as okay enough to sit at the table. That's the kind of stuff they're up against, where women are up against that and then some. And number 5, the final question I'm going to be responding to out of the guide is, the terms good Korean and good Japanese are used many times throughout the book. What does it mean to be a good Korean? What does it mean to be a good Japanese? In this time period, a good Korean is the hardest worker in the room, okay? They are studying harder because they are not only trying, like, to prove that they themselves are worthy, they're also trying to be an example for their entire race. Is that not insane? They're like, see, we're not all like that. And that isn't that sad to think about? But like, there are races that are still having, even the United States today, having to do that. And that is like, what's an interesting parallel that you can draw from that book to like what our country's going through now. So I was really interested in seeing that in the book and making that parallel. And so that's, you know, being a good Korean is being like impeccable with your word, impeccable with your manner, hardest worker in the room. You have to try 20 times harder than any Japanese, because a Japanese person in this book can be lazy as hell, and that's a-okay because they're Japanese. Straight up, just because they're Japanese, they're still better than the best Korean, and that makes no damn sense. And then to be a good Japanese is when the benevolent overlords decide they're going to mingle with the common folk, pretty much. Like, there is a girl that Noah dates in the book, and she just can't stop bringing up the fact that he's Korean, and that it doesn't matter to her that he's Korean, like, that Korean men are attractive, and she doesn't give a damn what her family says, and she's just like setting herself up for martyrdom, okay? But she in her head thinks that makes her a good Japanese. So being a good Japanese means treating Koreans like actual human beings in this context of the book. Okay, so that's my last question. I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope I didn't spoil it too much. I know I put some spoilers out there, so sorry, but trust me that the book is full of more. Such a good book. It's so worth your read. I highly suggest it. And if you guys are interested in hearing more reviews from me, please make sure you subscribe below and click the notification bell to be alerted of when I am live and in living color. Well, not live, but like in living color pretty much. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time.